I'm your host, Riem Labidin, and you are listening to TechTag Podcast. Today, our guest is Jorge Vásquez. He's a backend software engineer and he works at Scalac. Jorge had the chance to work with several technologies and programming languages across different industries. Sounds interesting, right? So stay with us and let's meet him and learn about his journey. Hello, Jorge. Welcome to TechTag.
Hi, William. So thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to talk with you today.
The pleasure is mine. I would be happy to know you more. I know you mostly from the conferences, from the Scala conferences and the events. Introduce yourself and tell us some fun facts about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Jorge Vásquez. I'm a developer from Bolivia in South America. I currently am working now in Scalac, this development company from Poland. It's already been 2 years that I'm with them. It's been a great experience. And fun fact about me, well, I enjoy lately doing photography. So that's something I like to do in my spare time.
That's good.
Yeah, it's very relaxing, and I think it's something completely different from programming, right? And that sometimes is needed, like relaxing and getting fun with something completely different from what you do all the time, right? So
and also you need to pick the nice places and go to the nature, and this also will make you do more activities just to find a nice place for the pictures. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. You have to go out, right? Because sometimes when you work remotely, right, you tend to be a lot in your home, right? And you don't go out so much. So going to these places to take some pictures makes you go out there and meet some nice places. So yeah, it's fun, and it helps a lot to have a balance in life, I think.
Yeah, I agree. How did you start your path to become a developer? How things started? Was it from your education when you were at school, or was it before? How did it start from the very first inspiration?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, because my dad is a software developer. Well, he's retired now, and well, he worked in a completely different time, right? So I remember when we had our first computer, I was very little, I think 3 years old or something like that. And well, I saw my dad working sometimes in the computer in my house, right? That way, I think I've always been attracted to computers since that time.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I don't know why we didn't have the computer anymore. I don't know why. And many years, I didn't have any computer at all at home. So the only computers I could work with were in school.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I remember learning stuff in school, like Office, right? Word, PowerPoint. It was the typical things you learned when you were a child. And I was always curious, trying to learn. And because I didn't have the computer at home, I remember my dad had some books about Office, Excel, and things like that. And I liked to read them at home. And I remember making notes of the things I liked the most to give them a try in school, like making your document a lot fancier. Or I remember these things, word arts in Word, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always curious about that. And about programming itself, I remember it was also in school. That was when I was in the latest years. We started to do programming with BASIC. I remember that was the first language I've learned, BASIC. It was very weird and at the beginning, right? Because the syntax was a little obscure to me at that time. And I still didn't have a computer at home, right? So I remember my teacher gave us a homework. I don't know what the program was. It was a simple one, but it had to work perfectly. And if you didn't have a computer, you could write the program in paper, right? And it had to work. So the teacher would see the code in paper and pass it to the computer, and it had to work. And I remembered I was very scared because that teacher was very strict. But the program worked, thankfully.
Wow.
So yeah, I reviewed it several times, I remember. And yeah, it worked. And I was very happy about that. Well, later I changed school. In that other one, we learned Fox Pro, I remember. It was a language that my dad used at work as well. So he could help me a bit. And well, thankfully, at that time, we again had a computer at home. So I could practice more with it. So yeah, those were like the first languages I've learned. Well, later university came. And well, actually, I didn't study software engineering. I studied telecommunications engineering. But lots of classes were about software development. I remember the first classes were programming with C. So I've learned C, then was C++. So those were the other languages I've learned. So that's when I learned a lot about object-oriented programming. We did everything in C++. Later, I took some other courses about Java, but the main language was C++. Yeah, that was the first steps in object-oriented programming. And later, it was this thing that you could choose any class you wanted that the university offered. It didn't have to be something from your career. It could be anything. So I remember I was thinking about what class to take at that time, and my programming teacher told me, "Oh, maybe you can take this functional programming class." I give that class, and I think you will like it because it's like something very math oriented, and I loved math at university. And yeah, I thought, well, yeah, why not? It seems fun. And I remember I was the only crazy guy from my career in that class, right? Because everyone else was from software development, and I was the only one from telecommunications engineering. And they told me, "What are you doing here? Aren't you scared about this this class?" Because everyone was scared about functional programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded very complicated, right? Because it was with Haskell. It was like the basics of functional programming, actually. It made you think in a completely different way, right? Because, well, with Haskell, you didn't have the option to keep doing imperative programming, right? Like in Scala, for example, you can choose to keep doing some things imperative. But in Haskell, it wasn't possible. So, yeah, I loved that class, actually. I really liked it. But sadly, it was the only class about functional programming in the curriculum. So I was thinking always if it was possible to use functional programming in real life, because working with Haskell seemed like very academic at that time. Well, later I've realized that there are companies that use Haskell in production, right? But at that time, I thought like it was very academic, and it was like something just to expand your mind, right? Like having a new way of thinking, but in real life, everything you will use is object-oriented programming, always. So I wanted to use that in practice. But well, that was my first contact with functional programming. And well, later I finished my career. I started working first in telecommunications. Later I changed job. I remember I had a teacher at university. He invited me to work with him in the company he was. And well, he was the manager of the software development area. It was a telco company here in Bolivia, but he was in charge of the software development area. So that seemed very interesting to me, right? Because it was telecommunications, but combined with software development. So I really liked that because I thought I could put in practice this knowledge I've got about software development, but still keep developing the telecom knowledge.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was also great experience for me because it was like the first real life software development job I've got. And it was everything in Java, and it was pure Java. I remember we didn't use any frameworks, any libraries. Everything was developed inside the company in-house.
Mm-hmm.
So, and well, we used C++ as well. There were some very low-level libraries to interact with the telecommunications network, and it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember one day my boss told me, "Oh, look, Jorge, I've seen this interesting language. It was pretty new. It was Kotlin, and it was the first days of Kotlin, I think." And he told me, this language seems very interesting because it's like a better Java, and you have like a simpler syntax and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started to investigate more about it because it seemed interesting. So I started reading about Kotlin, and I found, I think, one blog where they compared Scala to Kotlin, the typical comparison between the two languages, right?
Yeah.
And I started reading about Scala. At that time, I didn't know about Scala at all. I never heard about Scala. I think it was 2015 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems very interesting because when I was reading the characteristics of the language, it mentioned it supports functional programming, and that made my eyes.
It's like a spark.
Yeah, it's like a spark. Oh, functional programming again, and it's a Scala, and it works on the JVM. It can interact with Java. So yeah, I was very excited about that. And since that time, I stopped reading about Kotlin. It didn't interest me anymore. And I started to learn about Scala itself.
And it was during your job?
Yeah. I was still in that job. Yeah. And I told my boss, well, look, I found an even better language than Kotlin. And I think it's a Scala, and you can do functional programming with this. And I was very excited. And yeah, I've learned also about akka. I've read about akka, and I told him, I think we should give this library a try, akka. I know we don't use any frameworks or libraries here in the company, but I think we really should give this a try. Yeah, because for the use case, it was, I think, a very appropriate choice to use akka because these were telco systems, right? It was like the core network of mobile 3G and 4G networks. So this core had to be very concurrent, right? Because we had to support all users in the country to send short messages when they were still popular, right? And supporting billing and all of that stuff. And it had to have high availability, right? Because it was a telco company. If you had downtime, that meant also lots of money that the company had to pay to the authorities, regulating authorities, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was a very great library for our use case, but sadly I couldn't use it because, well, everyone else just worked with Java, right? And if we wanted to use akka, for example, with Scala, everyone would need to learn about Scala first, and it was something that people weren't too excited.
Open to
try. Exactly. So what I did that time, it was I was still learning about akka at that time. About Scala itself, I remember I took the Coursera specialization with Martin Odersky. And that's when I also learned about Spark. And I was also very excited about Spark. It was something very new, I think, at that time. Spark was also something I thought could be used in that company because we had lots of CDRs, those call records of every call, every message that's sent in the company, right? And you have to process those records to get some statistics about, I don't know, for example, if there are problems in the network and things like that, right? And I thought Spark was also a very good fit for that. But again, I couldn't introduce that in the company, sadly.
Like, I think this was from, it could be considered as a challenge. Did you try to provide some examples to convince the company to take into consideration some technology?
Yeah, I tried. And I remember actually I've even presented a course in the company about introduction to Scala, right? So I've gave my coworkers this course, and well, they were a little excited about it, but I think they didn't want to leave their comfort zone with Java, right? So yeah, it was a real challenge, and I really tried.
Even it didn't work as you wanted or as you wished, but it is something that helped you to make the effort to, for example, when you introduce about Scala or different technologies to the company, you are also developing new skills. It's personal and a professional growth for you, even if it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Because well, that time I had to prepare that course, right?
Yeah.
When you prepare these courses, these talks, right, you have to force yourself to understand better, to explain well, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that really helped a lot to better understand Scala. I also gave some other courses at university because I was also a teacher. Well, it was the university where I studied. Then I became a teacher there. And I also tried to promote functional programming with Scala there because, yeah, I knew there was only this only class about functional programming with Haskell, and it was like just an introduction, right? And you had the impression that it was something only academic, but with the Scala, I wanted to give the impression that you could use that, use functional programming in real life, right? So that was also a nice experience there.
And you are a teacher of programming or what?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was a teacher. I'm not a teacher there anymore. But yeah, actually, the first class I've given there, it wasn't telecommunications. It was programming. It was this programming with C++, intro to object-oriented programming. That was my first class. And yeah, well, I remember I got that chance because when I was studying, I was like assistant to my teacher. So I took the class with her, and some years later, I've presented myself to be an assistant, and I was her assistant. So I was her assistant like the 2 last years of my career. So I had a lot of experience there teaching as well. So that's how I got that job. And well, later I remember I gave another class. It was with Java as well, and I gave these courses with Scala. And well, I also gave other courses more related to telecommunications, right? But yeah, that was it. And well, I'm not working there anymore now.
This experience develops more skills for knowledge sharing. You will not find it difficult for you to share your knowledge or present or something, because some people would find it challenging to explain or maybe to get this idea to say, okay, I will give a presentation for what I have discovered or have learned new. It requires courage and also interest on teaching.
Yeah.
And it's good that you already have it. It gives more value.
Yeah. I think, I've always liked to teach. So yeah, I think that was a very nice, very great experience. And I remember even when I was at school, my teachers told me I should be a teacher someday. So yeah, that was really nice. And as you say, it helps when you are working inside a company, a software development company, to have this knowledge sharing with everyone, right?
Yeah.
Having this teaching experience at university is, it's been really helpful to me, and it helped me to like being more easily talk to people, right? But because I was always like this introvert person, and having this experience of forcing yourself to present to people, and yeah, it really helps a lot also in the personal side, right? So yeah.
And I'm interested to know if like also teaching would develop skills for empathy, to practice empathy with your students. I assume that the teacher will have more knowledge, like they already have experience more than their students, so they share about their experience in order that the students will be able to understand. The teacher should put themselves in the position of their students to teach them from their level. Like sometimes there are people who already have many experience. They say it's obviously, and they don't explain it a lot. And I think teaching requires empathy, or maybe a good teacher or a good mentor would be great if they have empathy.
That's true. If you want to be a good teacher, you have to always remember that, right? And I remember when it was the first time I was an official teacher. I tried to remember the feeling I had when I was a student, right? I had these teachers, like they were very smart people, they were PhDs and things like that, but precisely because of being PhDs, they were like at a different level than us. And they tried to always speak at their own level, right? And it was hard to understand them. Or sometimes they felt, well, they gave that impression that, well, I know a lot and you poor little ones don't know anything, right? So I didn't want to give that impression. And well, I've also realized that when you learn more stuff and more stuff about something, it gets a lot harder because I don't know, it's like your brain rewires itself. So it becomes harder and harder, I think, to keep you grounded and remember that you are talking to people that are just beginning to learn, right?
Exactly.
And you always have to keep remembering that to yourself, right? And I think it's complicated, but it's also a skill you get, right? Like practicing to ground yourself a little bit, right? And remember to the audience you are talking to. Well, there are sometimes that you have an audience that has a higher level, right? So you have to always keep in mind to what kind of people you are trying to teach, right? So that's important.
Yeah, you're right. And let's talk about your next experience, about your next job and how you progress in your career.
Okay. Yeah, well, I was working on this telco company I've mentioned, and I decided to change job. I went to another company here in Bolivia that develops software for US companies mostly. And that was also another challenge for me because I had to learn lots of things by myself, because in this job, in this telco company, as I've mentioned, everything was just pure Java, right? We didn't use like other typical libraries like Spring Boot, for example, in the Java world. So to apply to this other company, I needed to know about these frameworks and libraries because they are used a lot in the clients this company had, right? So I had to learn about that myself. And well, I took some courses and I read some books and I learned about it. And it was also a challenge because it was going to be my first job in English, right? Because my jobs here were always here in the country in Spanish, right? And that was going to be my first job in English. And well, I know English already, but it's different to use English all the time, right? So it's hard. And I remember I had this interview first with the company here, and the whole interview had to be in English. So I was a little nervous, but it went okay, thankfully. And well, after that, I had an interview with the client I was going to work for. So these were clients in the US, right? So I was even more nervous because, well, before I had the interview in English, but it was with people here in Bolivia. They also talked Spanish. So, but with the US, it was different, right? It was really, I had to know English. So I was nervous, but it went okay. And thankfully, those guys were really, really nice people. So they made me feel comfortable. And they took me and I started working with them. And well, that job was very interesting because this client used several technologies and several languages. It wasn't just only one. They did everything in AWS. So that forced me to learn about AWS because before, here in the telco company, for example, everything was on premises, right? It wasn't in the cloud. So I had to learn about cloud, and they used Python a lot. So I had to work with Python in a production system. I already knew something about Python, but I didn't. I've never had used it in production, right? In a big system. So I had to learn about Python. They also used a little of Ruby. Well, I didn't work too much with the Ruby side, but I had to learn something about it. They also used Java, Spring, and things like that.
Yeah.
And they also used Spark, but they used the Python version of Spark. So yeah, so well, I've seen that they used PySpark, and I've told them that was when I was excited because I thought, well, maybe I can convince them to start using Scala instead of Python for this thing, right? So I told them, maybe we should use Scala instead of Python for this because Python is awful. You have to be very careful because there is no type checking, there's no compiler, right? It was painful to work with Python. And they listened to me and they told, well, maybe we can do some spike to research, compare, for example, which language would be the best, maybe Python, maybe Java, or maybe Scala. So I remember some person did the research with Python, the advantages, disadvantages. Some other person did with Java, and myself did the spike with Scala. And well, at the end, Scala won, right? So
cool.
Yeah, thankfully, yeah. And that way I could start using Scala in a production system with Spark, right? So we migrated the PySpark jobs to Scala. They also had lots of jobs in Hive, written in Hive, and they ran on AWS, on EMR. And we also migrated them to Spark. So that was awesome. And at the end, all the jobs were in Spark, in Scala. And well, after that, I wanted to use Scala for more things, right? Not just Spark. But yeah, at the beginning, it was exciting for me because it was the first time I've used Spark in the real world with Scala. But I started to get a little bored of just doing Spark, right? So I started learning more about Scala. I've started to research how to do REST APIs and things like that. So I've learned about Play, for example. And it came to my mind, again, the functional programming part, right? So I was always thinking about that. And I started looking for some talks or articles, blogs about it again. So I started looking in YouTube, some talks, and I found talks about CATS effect, Scala Z. So I started to learn about them first, and it was a little hard to me. It was weird because these, for example, books about cats, they were a little hard to follow to me. They weren't too clear as I would.
Advanced.
Yeah, they were too advanced. It was like you were mentioning before, like it was like they were at a higher level, right? And assuming that everyone else should understand that level, right? And they weren't like beginner, really well organized beginner material. So it was hard. So I thought, well, maybe I should go back to Haskell and go deeper into Haskell, not just the things I knew from university. And I found some very nice books in Haskell that were from the very beginning, and they were increasing complexity. So I got to finally understand this functor and applicative and monad stuff finally. And I went back to Scala again. I thought, well, maybe now I can understand this stuff in CATS and Scala set, and I understood them better. But still, it felt like if I wanted to introduce that in my job, for example, it would be very hard to convince people. Well, I kept looking if there was something easier to understand. And also, well, even if I understood better how cats worked, for example, I still didn't see how to use functional programming in a real world application. It still seemed to me a little weird. Too abstract. Yeah, and all these implicits and stuff in Scala, right? Yeah. But so I kept looking, and I remember I found a talk by John DeGose. It was about Scala Z.io, and I looked at it because, well, I've seen this I/O thing that I've learned about in Haskell, right?
Yeah.
So that seemed interesting to me. I started looking at the talk, and I think it was a talk where John showed some examples of how easy it was to work with Scala Z.io. Yeah, so I got really interested. So I started looking more talks from John, right? And that's how I got to Zio. And I realized that Zio was like the new version of Scala Z.io. And when I looked at Zio, it was really, really impressive to me. And that's when the light came to my mind, right? So I was finally understanding how to apply functional programming in a real world application, in the whole application, right? Not just in some parts of the code, right? Because even when I worked in this telco company, we used Java 8, and Java 8 introduced lambdas and these streams API that had these nice things from functional programming, but I could use them just in little parts of the code, right? Like the whole application was still written using object-oriented style, right? And in some parts, like to reduce lines of code, I could use these functional programming things, right? But it wasn't the whole application using functional programming. But with Zio, it was the first time I really understood how to apply functional programming to the whole thing, right? Yeah. So I got really excited about that. I started learning more about it. I started to look some blogs, articles. In fact, I've read some of your articles. So you are, I think, a lot of the reason I'm working now with functional programming. Yeah, so thank you for your articles. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Thank you for the kind word.
Yeah, because I remember your articles were like from the ground up, right? I remember you started with Zio first, and at the end you integrated with HTTP4S, I remember, and Doobie and stuff. So that was really, really helpful. And I started to write my own pet projects with that. And I remember, I followed John, and he tweeted about his Patreon program. And I was really excited about that because, before I thought, I'd like to take some courses with John because he seems like a very good teacher from his talks. Yeah. And when he created his Patreon, it was like a dream come true for me, right? Because I could join that and take John's courses on Zio and functional Scala. And that's when I really got to learn well about Zio. And I felt I was ready to take the next step and start looking for just a Scala job. So I wanted to use Scala the whole time. I didn't want to keep using Python or Java because I felt that was restraining me from using all this functional stuff, right? It was nice. I learned a lot, but I felt that I needed to work more with Scala.
Yeah.
So I started looking jobs, remote jobs, because here, in Bolivia, I think there aren't any jobs with functional programming. Everything is object-oriented programming. And I remember I was looking. I applied to some places. Some of them they weren't interested because they were remote, but just US, right? Or just Europe and things like that. And I was looking at talks from Functional Scala 2019, I remember, in YouTube. And there was this guy from Scalac that presented about Zio actors, I remember. And he mentioned, well, I work in the Scalac and we are hiring and we are a remote first company.
Wow.
And yeah, I was really excited about that. So my eyes were very open. Yeah, I was very happy and I applied immediately. And I remember I think I was on vacation, I think. And I thought, well, I will apply now. I really want that job because Scalac seems like a company that, well, it was obvious that just worked with Scala, right? So
from the
I
name
felt it
also.
was, yeah, from the name, right? So yeah, and well, I didn't know if they were going to take me, right? Because, well, it was a company from Poland, from Europe, and I didn't know if they were going to accept someone from the other side of the world, right? But I applied. I thought, well, what can I lose, right? So I applied, and I remember one of the girls from the talent team replied to me very quick. I was very happy about that. And we started the interviews. They gave me like these typical code challenges, right? To write some application with Scala. And well, because I've learned already about Zio and stuff, I wrote the application integrating HTTP4S with Zio again because of reading your article. I had, yeah.
Glad to hear that. It's very nice.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Yeah. And yeah, I got the job. So that's how I'm in Scalac. That was 2 years ago, and yeah, that's how I got to where I am now. Yeah.
How did you think when after you started using Scala in functional way? You are using Scala not only for Spark, right? Now, currently, you are using Scala with functional programming way, like you wanted, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'm not working with Spark anymore. Yeah, and now, for example, for the client I'm working, they use Zio. So I'm having the chance to work with Zio practically all the time. And like I'm being able to even doing some nice refactorings around Z layers and stuff. And I've been able to introduce Zio Prelude there, for example. I'm trying also to introduce Zio HTTP there and stuff like that, because now they use a Plain framework, for example, integrated with Zio. But well, it's Play. And yeah, so well, now it's like a dream come true to me, right? So I was finally able to find a job where I can use functional programming practically all the time. That was something I dreamt about since I was in college, right? I didn't think it was possible. I thought object-oriented programming was all that was out there, but I was wrong. And yeah, I'm really happy now in Scalac. Well, they are really great people, not just in this because of this technical part of Scala, right? Because they are really nice people in the personal side. And well, I'm still in the Patreon program with John. So it's great that I'm still learning from him lots of stuff because John knows a lot, right?
Yeah.
And well, he also always helps me with preparing these talks I've presented about Zio. So I've been also learning from him how to be an even better presenter, even better teacher, right? So yeah, well, now with Scala 3, I think it's even more exciting than before because Scala 3 now it's a lot better than Scala 2. So yeah, well, now I'm not using Scala 3 in production yet, but I think maybe soon I'm going to start using it. So yeah.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah.
And like you are also giving talks in different events. And this is very nice that you are practicing and working and teaching, using your skills, and you are improving, or let's say growing in the direction where you really exactly want to be, right?
Yeah. And yeah, in fact, that's another reason I joined Scalac, right? So I've seen that I would have these opportunities like to present these talks, right? I really liked that Scalac was a sponsor of these events, for example, of functional Scala, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to have the opportunity also to write these articles in their blog, right? So I've written also some articles, some ebooks for the Scalac blog. So yeah, I thought that was also something I wanted because in the jobs I had before, like I had the opportunity to do great stuff in the object-oriented programming side, but it was like something very closed, right? I didn't have the chance to interact with more people, like giving these talks, right?
Yeah.
And I've always liked that. Now, well, I'm not teaching at university anymore, but I wanted to keep having these chances to teach people, right? Like to share the knowledge I have. And as you have mentioned before, that also helps you to understand better, right? It's teaching is something very great, right? Because you're not just sharing knowledge, but also your own knowledge increases. Because yeah, when you're trying to make things clear, that's when you get to understand things at a deeper level. Like you start seeing some relationships between concepts that were before isolated, right? And you start to see relationships between them, and that helps you even to understand better and to program better, right? To use functional programming better. So yeah, that's really nice. Yeah.
And I think also sending, let's say, a proposal to a conference, and when your proposal get accepted, makes you have to do it. I don't know. Personally, I get lazy to search for or to start using new libraries from, for example, the Z organization. I see different new libraries, and I didn't get the chance to check them out. Then I found it very helpful to send a proposal and say that I'm going to use these libraries and I have no idea. I didn't check them out. And once my proposal get accepted, I have to look now.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how is that. Yeah, it's like a good, how do you say that?
It's a challenge or I don't exercise or.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
It's like it forces you, right, to investigate more. And yeah, I have the same feeling as well, because there are too many libraries out there, right? And for example, now in Zio, just in Zio, in the Zio ecosystem, there is lots and lots of libraries. I think every day they are creating some new library about some cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, when I had to write these blog posts, for example, or had to prepare these talks, it's like it forces you to learn about them, right? So
yeah.
I also use that as a personal motivation, right? Like I have to do it, right? Because I have now like the compromise to have this blog post written or prepare this talk for this day, right? So it's like a motivation. So yeah, I have the same feeling. Yeah.
Have you considered to provide virtual courses, for example, in Coursera or different platforms?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've created a course some years ago, but it wasn't anything related to Scala or functional programming. It was about machine learning. And yeah, that was also something that motivated me to learn more about machine learning at that time. And yeah, it was a nice experience. I had to learn other stuff as well, right? Like how to record the course, right? It's not as easy as you would think, right?
Exactly.
You need to, for example, I needed to prepare a script for recording the videos, right? Because I had to record in English, and English is not my first language. I couldn't afford myself to just improvise while I was talking, right? Because I would have all the time this like and what was the word I had to use, right? So I needed to prepare the script beforehand. I needed to think about, for example, how I was going to record the video, how I was going to record the screen, or the audio, how to edit the audio and how to post-process it. So, for example, your breathing is not heard in the video and things like that, right? So yeah, and also how to choose the microphone and what microphones are the best, how you need to position the microphone, because it's not the same if you position it in horizontally or vertically, I don't know. So yeah, that was a very nice experience, and I'd like to at some time do again another of these courses, but now about Scala and Zio and functional programming, right? So yeah, I'm thinking about that. Maybe in a future soon, I'm going to find the time to do that. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah, that would help a lot of people. I think that people always get hard time to start.
Yeah,
especially if they already know Java, it seems a bit different because of functional programming.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of these fancy terms, right? And that's also something I liked about Zio. And even I forgot to mention, in the company I was before, when I used Spark and things like that, I got to introduce Zio to them. So yeah, because initially I was thinking about cats and this stuff, right? But I thought that was going to be very hard to introduce. But Zio, it was easier, because at the beginning you don't even have to mention functional programming. You don't even need that, right? They don't even need to know what a monad is, right? It's not necessary. You can just relate to already known stuff like as programming to interfaces, right? In Zio, you really apply that principle to programming to interfaces and testability and things like that. So I think it's very relatable. And well, after you introduce Zio, you can start introducing other more technical, more advanced stuff of functional programming, but to start using Zio, you can start using it without having to know all of that stuff, and you can be productive, I think, from the beginning with some correct teaching, right? I think it's a lot easier now, and with Scala 3, I think it's even better. So yeah.
And in your career, was it all of your jobs remotely, or only the latest one?
Yeah, the latest ones, right? So Scalac and the job I had previously, it was also remote. The company was here in Bolivia, and sometimes I went to the office for some very specific stuff, but in general I worked remotely. And yeah, the jobs I had before, they were in the office here in Bolivia. Right? So yeah, also like having these fully remote jobs for me, it was also like a dream come true. That's why I'm so happy, I think, now in Scalac, because it's remote first, and also I have this functional programming stuff. And I think remote jobs are great if you like them, because there are people that don't like them too much, right? There's people that like a lot, like being in the office and having the chance to interact with your co-workers every day. I think that was also nice. I remember when I worked in the office, it was nice having that interaction too. But for me personally, the advantages of working from home are far greater than the advantages I had in the office. Like being able to, in Scalac, for example, I had the option to organize my time as I want, right? So I like to start working early, very early in the morning, but that's a personal decision of mine, right? Because later I have the afternoon free to do my stuff, right? Like, I don't know, keep doing my photography stuff or learning languages, right? That I also like to learn languages a lot. That's or cool. I don't know, having my dog here, right? I love dogs, and having my dog here with me all the day, or having my wife near to me all the day, I really like that. Like,
this is very nice.
Yeah, having the chance to be more time with my family, right? Because before, when I worked in the office, I felt like I was more time in the office, right, that in my house with my family. So I really appreciate that. It's really nice. And also, when we didn't have this COVID stuff, and you were able to freely travel everywhere, I was able to for example, to travel to Brazil. My wife is from Brazil, and keep working, right? So I could keep working from Brazil, and I was also knowing some nice places in Brazil. So yeah, I think that's really awesome, and I wouldn't change it. I think I would have a really hard time if I needed to go back to office. It will be difficult, yeah.
And like a remote work for you gave you the flexibility in time and also in like places. You can work wherever you want. Do you feel that you are more productive?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm a lot more productive, and I feel I have more time to do my personal stuff as well, right? Because I can organize my time better. Because the problem in the office was that sometimes I didn't have too much things to do, right? There were sometimes that, well, it was like a more calm time, right? And there wasn't too many new things to develop, or there weren't too many bugs to solve, right? And well, I could do some stuff like reading books, for example, at that time, but there were others I couldn't do, right? Like photography, for example, right? But now, because I can organize my time better, I can organize myself better for my job time, right? And after that, I can do the other stuff I want, or I have even more time to prepare for my talks, for example, or to write my blog posts, or I don't know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's a lot better. You are a lot more productive. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think from my perspective, it is something important to have also the interaction with the colleagues. And do you have this chance remotely to know about the culture of the company or the environment? Like, because every company has to make you feel that you are included and you have many advantages to be there in the environment. Do you still feel it when you are working remotely?
Yeah, that's something I like as well of Scalac. Well, I'm working remotely, and well, very remotely, because they are in Poland, right? But we always have this integration. Well, now that we weren't able to travel because of restrictions, we had these integration meetings internally in the company by Zoom, at least, and we had these like nice integrations where, I don't know, we played games or stuff, or cooking sessions and things like that. So yeah, that's really nice. And also we have like these sometimes more formal meetings with the talent team from time to time, so we don't lose track of each other. So I think that's very important. And well, now that travel is more open, I think well, we are going to being taking again these in-person meetings, right? Like well, Scala has always had those meetings, but now I think this year we're going to retake that. So yeah, that's also a nice chance to meet in person.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for remote companies, like having these from time to time, these in-person meetings, events. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So to wrap up, do you have an advice or an inspirational quote you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, my only advice, well, I remember I had a teacher when I was in school, and he told us, well, it was in Spanish, but it was, today you have to be better than yesterday, and tomorrow better than today, right? So I always have that in mind, like being better every day means like learning new stuff all the time. I think that's very important, especially in software development, right? Like trying to learn stuff that excites you, right? Like in my case, it was functional programming, Scala and Zio. So I'm always trying to learn more and more about that. Always have an open mind to new stuff as well, right? I'm also trying not to be so attached to one thing, right? So, well, I love functional programming and Zio and stuff, but there's also other things out there that are nice, to learn about, right? So I always try to have my mind open to other things as well, and keep learning about them. So as I've mentioned, photography, right? I've never thought I would do photography before, but when I started learning about it, I really liked it. So yeah, that was nice. But having that open mind is what will make you try this other stuff that are outside of your comfort zone. And yeah, also like take risks, right? So for me, for example, joining Scalac, it was like at the beginning something like a little scary for me, right? Not because of the company, because Scalac is really great, but for me, for example, it was like the first time I was going to work with a really remote company, because the company I worked before, it was remote work, but the company itself was in my own country, right? So it wasn't as remote as working for a company in Poland, right? So for me, it was a bit scary at the beginning, but well, now I think it was the best decision I've taken these last years. So also like being open to take these risks that can be life-changing. I think it's very important.
It's inspiring how you achieved the things that you were interested in and discovered about along the way, and then you followed your passion until these opportunities showed up and you took the risk to achieve them. And I wish you all the best in the future. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sharing about your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you, Wim. And well, this has been a pleasure. It's also nice to finally talk to you, at least virtually, right? I hope we meet each other in person someday. And well, thank you again for your nice talks and articles that have been really helpful for me. Yeah.
You're welcome. I'm very glad that I could help in some way. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm looking forward to our next episode with a new guest and new inspiring story. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned to our next episode. Tic Tac, tackle the inspiration.